Hello there everyone, how you doing today? I hope you're all well. Today we're reading an r/no sleep story written by I'm Bollocks called The Thing Beneath the Drain. If you enjoy, remember to like, subscribe, and leave a comment down below, and hit that notification bell. Now, without further ado, let's get started, shall we? I never wanted to work for the association. No one does. But when you've seen what's out there, what really exists, you either join up or spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder. I'm brave enough to live on the run, so here I am, a cleaner. My job? Keeping the building running, fix what's broken, and clean up after the messes the wardens leave behind. I do mostly plumbing jobs, which means I spend most of my time underground, and for the most part it's quiet. Not many of us are assigned to these lower levels, so I can spend weeks without seeing another soul, and that's perfectly fine. As a cleaner, being invisible isn't just normal, it's safe. Wardens and sometimes even other cleaners only notice you when something goes wrong. Sadly, though, something went wrong. It started with a clogged drain on sublevel 4, a part of the building that barely sees any use. They sent me down with a basic kit, gloves, a wrench, a flashlight, and a creeping sense of dread. Sublevel 4 is the lowest and has always felt off. The air is heavy and stale, like it's been trapped down there for decades. Even the walls seem closer together, the hum of the pipes louder and constant. When I reached the drain, it was worse than I expected. The water was backed up, the smell sour and rotten. Not wanting to spend more time than I need among this festering smell, I hurried to unscrew the gate and began pulling out the clog. At first, it was the usual gunk, sludge and slimy bits of moss. But then I saw something else. Something weird for this level. Strands of long black hair, slick and clinging to my gloves like they were made of Velcro. Mixed in with the hair were chunks of something soft and grayish pink, like rotting meat. My stomach churned as I bagged the mess, trying not to think about it. It's probably runoff from contaminant, I told myself. Weird, but not unheard of. And after a few minutes, the job was finished and I moved on. But that wasn't the end of it. Over the next few days, more clogs started showing up. Not just in the sublevels, but everywhere. The strangest part? Every pipe I cleared was packed with the same black, hair-like strands, tangled with bits of pinkish-gray gunk. The strands weren't just slimy, they were long, stretching deep into the pipes like roots. Cleaning them became a grueling chore, and before long my arms were useless, aching from dawn till dusk. But that was only the beginning, as things got even stranger. One afternoon, while cleaning a backup on sublevel 3, something brushed my wrist. I didn't think much of it at first, until a sharp sting, like a needle, pricked my skin. It was a strand of that black hair, stuck to my sleeve, writhing like it was alive. I ripped my hand back, shaking it loose, but a strange sensation lingered, cold and crawling, climbing up my arm, settling in my neck like a whisper I couldn't quite hear. That night was when I heard it for the first time. Not the groan of the pipes or the rush of water, but something else. Soft and melodic, like singing, low and mournful. It floated through the empty halls, disappearing just as I turned to listen. I told myself it was my imagination, but after a few days the distant hums turned into whispers, disjointed syllables, almost gibberish. But as I listened, they became clearer. Ina. It called my name, faint, as if coming from far away. I froze, my flashlight trembling in my hand. The sound seemed to echo from a nearby drain where water dripped in slow, uneven beats. Ina, it called again, not angry or threatening, just familiar. The voice was soft, almost comforting, like someone I hadn't seen in years. Could it be my mother? My sister? I leaned closer, heart pounding, the flashlight beam unsteady over the grate, but there was only the sound of water trickling below. I tried lying to myself, brushing it off as exhaustion, but things kept escalating. New clogs appeared every hour. Clear one and another would take up its place. Those black strands turned up at every drain, sinks, showers, clinging together as if they belonged there. The whispers grew louder. I heard them everywhere while working, walking the halls, even washing my hands. The name echoed through the pipes, carried on the faint hum of water, but that wasn't the worst of it. Every time I heard them, I felt drawn in, an urge to lean closer, press my ear to the pipes, follow the voice into the dark, dripping maze beneath the building. Then one night, while clearing a backup near the showers, I saw something, a ripple in the water, subtle but deliberate, like something had brushed against the surface. I shone my flashlight into the drain. Nothing. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. The feeling grew stronger as shadows flickered at the edge of my vision, shapes darting away before I could focus. Then one evening, while checking a maintenance panel, I saw a figure reflected in a puddle at my feet. By then, I couldn't deny it anymore. The clogs, the whispers, the hair, it was all connected. Something was in the pipes, something alive, and it was spreading. I reported my suspicions to Milo, my supervisor. He didn't even look up from his clipboard.
"You're overthinking it,"
he said dismissively.
"Probably just run off from the labs. Weird crap ends up in the pipes all the time."
"But Milo..."
"Unless something crawls out of the drain, it's not our problem. Just keep the water flowing. We've got enough issues as it is. I've already had to pull a bunch of guys for plumbing."
Frustrated, I turned to the other cleaners, hoping someone might listen. Sadly, they too brushed it off, cracking jokes about me hearing voices. When I showed them the bag of hair, they barely glanced at it.
"Biological residue,"
one of them said. Gross but harmless. Desperate, I broke the unspoken rule and went to a warden. I caught one in the hallway, a tall guy with a guardian wolf padding silently at his side. Its amber eyes locked onto me, unblinking like it was sizing me up.
"What do you want?"
the warden asked, his voice cold. I stumbled through my explanation, the clogs, the whispers, the strands of hair. As I spoke, the guardian growled low, a sound that rumbled in my chest.
"If something got loose, we'd know," he snapped. "An aberration could move this place without setting off every alarm we've got. Unless you've got evidence of a threat, stick to your job. Leave the problems to us,"
he said before walking away without another word, his guardian following, leaving me there clutching the bag of hair, feeling small and foolish. But deep down I knew something was wrong, and it didn't take long for the other cleaners to realize it too. It started with Tommy. He was the first to hear the voices. "A&R, someone was calling my name," he said, his voice tight under the fluorescent glare of the maintenance room. Tommy wasn't one to scare easily. Stocky, tough, always irritated with the states of the pipes, unshakable, but now his hands trembled against the edge of the workbench. "At first I thought it was just pipes groaning, but it sounded off, like a woman, soft but insistent. He leaned closer, lowering his voice. It came from the north showers, from inside the drain. I simply nodded, unable to admit I'd heard it the night before. Over the next few days, the voices spread, and Tommy weren't the only ones anymore. Mila, who managed inventory, swore she saw a face watching her in the reflection of a water tank, just for a second before it dissolved into ripples. Villy, one of the janitors, said something cold brushed his leg while he cleaned a flooded basement, though the room was empty. At first, everyone dismissed the incidents. Old pipes, drafty hallways, late hours. They told themselves it was nothing. But the stories kept piling up, each one more unnerving than the last. One night, I found Tommy staring at a sink in the staff bathroom, the faucet running. His expression was blank, like someone hypnotized. When I shook his shoulder, he blinked at me, startled. I heard her again, he whispered. She's waiting for me. And then people started disappearing. Juko was the first to go. He was the kind who'd stay up too late laughing with the crew, always the last to leave, so when he didn't show up for his shift, we figured he'd just overslept. But then his toolbox was found abandoned near the maintenance tunnels, still damp. Wet footprints led away from it, vanishing into a nearby drain. Next was Hanley. She'd been working overnight. By morning, her mop and bucket were still in the hallway, but she was gone. The floor was soaked, and the drain nearby clogged with those black hair-like strands. We reported it, of course. The wardens listened, but their dismissal was swift. Aberrations don't sneak through pipes, one said, smirking. This is a containment facility. Nothing gets out and nothing gets in. Their arrogance burned me, but I wasn't surprised by it. Wardens lived in a different world, one where they were the heroes and the hunters. We were just the ones scraping sludge out of the sewers. How could he see something they didn't? By then, every cleaner assigned to the plumbing was on edge. No one wanted to say it, but we all knew something was wrong. Something the wardens refused to acknowledge. After much effort, I finally gathered a small group. Tommy, Villy, and Satu, a new recruit, with a knack of digging through old records. If the wardens wouldn't take us seriously, we'd figure it out ourselves. Satu was the one who found the first real clue. Scouring association records, she stumbled across a report on Samivara, a small town that vanished overnight in 1960s. The official report offered no solid answers, but described strange occurrences leading up to the disappearance that matched what was happening around us. Villagers hearing voices from the wells, reflections in rivers that didn't match the people looking into them, livestock found drowned in shallow streams. The case, however, was marked possibly anomalous, unresolved, giving us no clue to what was happening and how to stop it. And so she came across the legend of Ragni Jaska, the Weeping Hare. According to Sami tales, it was a creature born of despair, living in deep waters. It whispered to its victims, luring them closer until they drowned in its embrace. The patterns matched, Satu said, spreading out a map of the facility. She'd marked the incidents with red pins. Whatever this thing is, it's moving. See how the clogs are spreading? They're all spreading from here. She tapped an abandoned section of the sewer system beneath the building. Tommy whistled low. You're saying there's an aberration living there? I didn't answer. The evidence was clear, but acknowledging it meant accepting that we were being hunted. Unfortunately, keeping our heads in the sand wasn't an option with 2 other cleaners disappearing the following week. It was time to take action. We prepared as best we could. Flashlights, ropes, wrenches, and a crowbar. None of us wanted to admit how scared we were, but the silence said enough as we descended into the lower sewers, to where Satu pinpointed the creature's lair. The air was cold down there, heavy with the stench of stagnant water. Pipes loomed like skeletal ribs, corroded and dripping with slime. Black strands clung to the wall, twisting faintly when our lights passed over them. "Is it alive?" Villy whispered, recoiling as he brushed against one. "Don't touch it," I warned. "Just keep moving." The voices started softly, a faint hum, like wind through the tunnels, and then they grew louder, more distinct. Tommy froze suddenly, staring into a dark corridor. "Do you hear that? It's my mother. She's calling me." "No, she's not," I snapped, grabbing his arm. "Keep moving." But the whispers weren't just sounds anymore. I saw flickers of movement, a woman in a white dress standing just out of reach, shadows flitting across the water. My pulse raced every time I turned my head, expecting something to lunge out of the dark. "Something's watching us," Villy muttered, gripping his crowbar tighter. "It's just in your head," I said, though not believing a single word of it. Things got worse after that. The voices and fleeting images were no longer our only concern. We began to feel it, faint at first, like a cold hand brushing my shoulder, but the deeper we stepped into the creature's domain, the more forceful it became. Tommy swore something tugged his sleeve, and Satu kept complaining her hair was being pulled. I was at my limit, ready to turn back, to run, but I knew it wouldn't stop. Sooner or later I'd vanish like the others. So I pressed on, urging the others forward, forcing my voice to stay steady. My body still. No matter how many times something brushed against me or whispered my name, every step felt like wading into a nightmare. But after what felt like an eternity, we finally reached the central chamber. The chamber was massive, where multiple sewer lines converged. The water churned with black strands, and the air hummed with a low melodic sound, haunting, almost hypnotic. "It's singing," Satu whispered, her voice trembling. "I always feel like singing whenever I got delivered to my room," Villy quipped, earning a sharp look from the rest of us. "Let's find this thing," I said, moving deeper into the chamber. The others followed quickly, our flashlights cutting through the darkness. "I didn't even know where to look," Tommy said. "Everything looks the same, tangled in these black strands." "I think," Satu began, tracing her flashlight across the strands. "I think they're converging on the same spot." She moved the beam slowly, following the strands into the water. And then we saw it, the aberration. It stood waist-deep in the water, its long black hair swirling like ink, and a pair of empty sockets locked onto us, piercing despite their hollowness. "Help me," it whispered, its voice echoing around us. Tommy stepped forward, entranced. "Tommy, no!" I grabbed him, yanking him back, just as her form unraveled. A writhing mass of hair and teeth. The strands surged toward us like grasping fingers, her song rising into a piercing wail. We bolted, splashing blindly through the tunnels. The melody chased us, pulling at our minds, trying to drag us back. It felt endless, every turn leading deeper into the labyrinth. Finally, we collapsed in a side tunnel, grasping for breath. Villy was trembling, clutching his crowbar like a lifeline. Satu's pale face gleamed in the dim light, her eyes drifting to every shifting shadow. "What the hell was that?" Tommy hissed, his voice a strange mixture of anger and terror. "The Rajavanaska," Satu whispered, barely audible, or something like that. "It's not just in the legends, it's real." "No," Villy snapped, his voice brittle. "It can't be. This is just... How did the Wardens miss something like this?" "What do you expect? Really?" I barked back. Villy didn't answer, lowering his head instead. That thing is hunting us. That's what's important right now, and if we don't figure out how to stop it, we're going to end up like Juka and Hanali. There's an old maintenance office deeper in the sewers, Satu suggested. It was decommissioned years ago, but it might have maps or schematics of this labyrinth, and maybe a way to get rid of that thing. Lacking a better plan, I nodded. Lead the way. The journey was harrowing. The deeper we went, the heavier the siren's influence became. Its voice grew louder, slicing through the steady drip of the tunnels. Words fragmented, voices we knew too well. Friends, family, the ones we'd lost. Ayanar, why did you leave me? My mother's voice echoed through the tunnel. She'd been dead for years, but it was her, exactly as I remembered. Don't listen, I muttered, gripping the cold, slick stone for balance. It grounded me, but the weight of the voice was nearly unbearable. The others were unraveling. Tommy mumbled, the wrench shaking in his hands. Villy flinched at every sound, eyes wide with panic. Satu clutched her notebook like a shield against the dark. And then I saw her, Hanali, standing in a side tunnel, her eyes dull, empty, her arms stretched out, beckoning me. Don't, Satu hissed, her grip tight on my arm. It's not real. I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat, but the pull was almost too much to resist. Luckily, Satu's sense of navigation was spot on, and soon enough we stumbled into the maintenance office. Its rusted door hung crooked on its hinges, the metal groaning as we forced it open. Inside, the air was damp and rank, thick with the stench of mildew. Dust coated the walls, lined with outdated control panels, their once blinking lights long dead. Satu wasted no time rifling through stacks of brittle files and blueprints, her movements frantic. The rest of us stood guard, though the black strands were everywhere now, snaking along the walls and ceilings. They moved like living things, coiling and stretching towards us like they could taste our fear. Got it! Satu's voice broke through the tension. She spread a tattered map across the floor, her finger tracing a route. Look, this pipe connects to the underground reservoir. A reservoir? Villy's voice was tinged with doubt. How will that help? Satu hesitated, then pointed at a scribbled note in the map's corner. Emergency drainage, manual override. If we can get her to the reservoir, we can activate the emergency drainage. We might flush it out, she said, though her voice wavered. And then if that doesn't work? Tommy asked, his knuckles white around the wrench. Then at least we'll have pissed it off, I muttered, forcing a grim smile that fooled no one. Tommy's brow furrowed as she studied the map again, tracing the network of pipes. Even if we block the other drains, there's no guarantee she'll go in there. She'll go, I said. She won't resist coming if her strands find someone, like a fly trapped in a spider's nest. Satu let out, filling the room with silence as the implication hung over us, suffocating. You're saying someone has to let those things touch them, Villy said, his voice sharp with disbelief. She hunts by connecting to her prey. We've seen it. Those strands wrap up around you and then she comes. If we control where it happens... You're insane, Villy said, standing abruptly. You're asking someone to what? Let themselves get dragged under and hope this plan works? It's the only way, Satu said, her voice steady despite the tremors in her hand. He's right. She won't move without a reason. Then who? Tommy asked, his voice cracking. Who's supposed to do it? The question hung in the air like a noose. My pulse thundered in my ears as I fought to find the strength to speak. I'll do it, Villy said, words quiet but firm. You can't. I should be the one to. You're not doing it, he said, glaring at me. You're the one holding this together. Without you, we're done. And Satu's the only one who knows how to work the controls. He forced a shrug, his lips pressed into a tight line. That leaves me or Tommy. Villy, Tommy began, but Billy cut him off with a sharp shake of his hand. Just don't. Let's get this over with. We moved quickly after that, the weight of Billy's decision pressing down on all of us. Satu led the way, her flashlight cutting through the darkness. The black strands were everywhere now, writhing faintly as if aware of our presence. The air grew colder with every step, the hum of the pipes replaced by a low, mournful melody that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. But thanks to Satu's accurate navigation, we quickly reached the reservoir. The reservoir was a massive, cavernous space, its walls slick with moisture. The water was still, its surface broken only by the occasional ripple. Black strands floated just beneath the surface, pulsing faintly like veins. "This is it," Satu whispered, her voice barely audible over the haunting song. "The manual override is over here." She pointed to a rusted control panel on the far side of the chamber. Billy stepped forward, his jaw clenched so tight I thought he might crack his teeth. "Let's do this," he muttered, his voice low and hollow. "Billy, you don't—" Satu started, her voice trembling, but he cut her off with a sharp wave of his hand. "I do," he said, turning to glare at her. His eyes darted to the strands creeping closer, their black tendrils stretching like curious fingers. "If I don't, we're all dead. Now get in position." For a moment, no one moved. Billy's words hung heavy in the damp air, but then Satu gave a hesitant nod and stepped over the control panel. Tommy and I exchanged a glance before moving toward the emergency valves, our footsteps splashing in the ankle-deep water. Billy waded forward, his breath audible in the echoing chamber. The water rippled around him, disturbed not just by his movement, but by something unseen beneath the surface. Then the strands reacted. They surged towards him like striking snakes, coiling around his legs and arms. Billy froze, his breath hitching as the black tendrils tightened, digging into his clothes and skin. "I'm fine," he grunted, though his voice wavered. "Just don't take your damn time." The strands crept higher, wrapping around his torso and pulling him deeper into the water. Billy flinched as one coiled around his neck, but he didn't fight it. His flashlight slipped from his grasp, clattering into the water with a splash before vanishing beneath the surface. The siren's hum grew louder, warping into something sharp and discordant. It burrowed into my skull, and I grit my teeth against the ache. "She's coming!" Billy grasped, his voice trembling. His body jerked as if the strands had shocked him, and his breathing grew ragged, but before any of us could react, the water erupted. The siren rose from the depths with an unnatural grace, its impossibly tall form framed by the writhing black strands that poured from her scalp like an endless river. Its hollow eyes locked onto Billy with an expression of a grotesque hunger and malice. Its mouth opened, and then the song turned into a scream, a raw, visceral sound that rattled my bones. "Now!" I shouted, my voice barely audible over the cacophony. Satu slammed her hand onto the control panel, and the valves groaned as the emergency drainage system roared to life. The water churned violently, pulling at my legs as the current surged towards the overflow channels. The siren's strands shuddered, the grip on Billy loosening as the rushing water forced them to retreat. But it didn't let go entirely. Instead, its head snapped towards us, its empty eyes burning with fury. "She's resisting!" Satu yelled frantically, pressing the buttons on the control panel. The siren let out another scream, and the strands lashed out in every direction. One caught my arm, yanking me forward, and I nearly lost my footing. Tommy grabbed me, pulling me back just in time, but the motion drew the siren's attention. "Ionar, help!" Billy's voice was hoarse, his body half submerged as the strands dragged him towards the center of the chamber. He clawed at the black tendrils, his struggles growing weaker as the siren loomed over him, its skeletal frame shimmering in the flickering light. Distract her, I shouted to Tommy, grabbing a piece of broken pipe from the floor. Without thinking, I hurled it towards the siren. It struck her side with a dull thud, and it turned its head toward me, its mouth opening in a soundless scream. Ionar, don't! Satu screamed, but it was too late. The siren's strands shot towards me faster than I could react. One wrapped around my wrist, the cold, slimy texture making my skin crawl. The current surged harder, the water swirling with an almost sentient force. Villy took advantage of the moment, thrashing against the loosening strands. With a guttural cry, he managed to free one arm and grab onto a nearby pipe, holding on for dear life. Satu, now! I yelled, struggling against the strand, dragging me closer to the water. Satu slammed another button, and the drainage system roared louder. The water level began to drop, the current intensifying as it pulled everything towards the overflow channels. The siren screeched, its form distorting, as the sound of the water tore at its strands. It flailed, its once imposing figure crumbling into a chaotic mass of black tendrils. But even as it was dragged towards the pipes, the aberration's hollow eyes locked onto me with a promise of vengeance in their empty depths. The strands around my wrist snapped free, and I stumbled backwards, gasping for air. Villy collapsed onto the floor, coughing violently as the last of the water drained away, taking the siren with it. For a moment there was only silence. The chamber was empty now, most of the black strands gone, but the air still felt heavy with an unshakable dread. We did it, Satu said, her voice barely above a whisper. She leaned against the control panel, her hands trembling. Villy let out a weak laugh, though it quickly turned into a cough. Next time, someone else gets to be the bait. I didn't share Villy's playful mood, or Satu's relief. All I could think about was the siren's hollow gaze staring back at me with hatred, and even as we climbed out of the reservoir, drenched and exhausted, I could see her image, as if it had been burned into my mind forever. The wardens weren't happy about the mess we'd made either, but they couldn't argue with the results. The clogs stopped, the voices faded, and the cleaners who had been affected by the aberration soon began to recover. But I knew it wasn't over. The siren wasn't gone. It was just far away, somewhere out there waiting. And next time we might not be so lucky. I can only hope the wardens get her before she gets to any of us. Even you, dear viewer.